Well, again, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me this afternoon. I'm excited to talk to you. Let's go ahead and jump right in. I know we connected because I know Parent Television Council has been very busy in launching campaigns in regards to cartoons that the council deems to be offensive. And you guys have always had an outspoken stance against cartoons, for years. Series like Family Guy and South Park and American Dad have all seen, the campaigns against them from PTC, and more recently, series like BigMouth and now LittleDemon, which became the impetus for this conversation. Why do you think cartoons are a popular target for parent television councils to educate others about?
Yeah, actually, if we go back just a little bit, we don't condemn cartoons. We condemn content. Mm-hmm. Whether it's cartoon, live action, TV commercials, we are very concerned about content that we believe has a potential harmful effect on kids. Mm-hmm. We look back at over 70 years of scientific academic research. There is a link between what a child consumes and their behavior and their development. I'm not saying that it's not like, you smoke one cigarette, you get cancer. It's not like you watch a bad show, you start to shoot people. But it's scientific proof that over the decades that the content that a child consumes can have, not always, but can have a harmful effect. You look at in the United States in the last I think it's 3 or 4 years, the number of children who have shared naked pictures of themselves online, ages 9 to 12. Mm-hmm. Why would the number of kids that at ages 9 to 12 triple who are sharing naked pictures of themselves? It's not because their parents are suggesting that they do so. It's influenced primarily from media that romanticizes, glamorizes, and asks them to do so. For kids ages 10 to 14, I just saw this research just recently. Children ages 10 to 14, the #2 cause of death in America is suicide now. Mm-hmm. And why is that? It's because there's darkness, depression. Kids are really struggling emotionally. And when we look back at what are the root causes of that, not all, but some of those causes come from a very dark media culture that kids are consuming. We also believe as an organization, the most important thing is a parent's role in what their kids are seeing. Parents are the first and last line of defense. But that doesn't mean that it should be the only line of defense. We are concerned about content that is marketed to kids or that is inherently attractive to kids. When kids see cartoons, they think this is for me. I love cartoons. I love animation. I have on my wall at my home Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner, Yosemite Sam animation cell art from back in the Warner Brothers old Looney Tunes days. I love cartoons. I actually, you'll find my name in the credits of a video game called Tiny Tank. Mm-hmm. I helped produce that video game. It's an animated tank that goes around shooting people. But it's a tank with an attitude. Really cute little tank. So I'm not anti-cartoon. What the mission of the PTC is, we're trying to protect kids from the graphic stuff that can be harmful. When you rattle off a couple of names of shows that we've condemned. Again, we're less condemning the show, we're condemning the content of the show. Okay. When you look at BigMouth, BigMouth, they say it's not intended for kids, but it's an animated show about middle school kids. I think it's really unfortunate that the creators of BigMouth throw in a joke about a boy sucking his father's dick. Pardon my language here. We're not using the broadcast airwaves, so FCC rulings. But when a little boy offers to give his father oral sex so he doesn't have to go to summer camp, and that's used as a punchline to a joke that we're supposed to be laughed and entertained by, at a time where the sexual exploitation of children is rampant, I'm going to throw my penalty flag there and say, ask the creators, maybe this isn't something we should laugh about. Over the years, you're right, we have condemned a lot of animated programming, partly, in great part, because kids are so inherently attracted to animation. We went after a lot of content on Family Guy, and it was kind of weird how over the years, Seth MacFarlane and I have become friends.
Yeah.
That's one of those really weird things, but it's one of those where we were quick to condemn one another until we started talking, and started talking, we realized each has some points to make. We can respectfully, we can disagree, and there's some things that we agree on. So, that's a long-winded to your question, but I think hopefully it puts some context around what we're concerned about.
Sure. Yeah. And I got to tell you, first, I'm jealous you got to meet Seth MacFarlane. I've always wanted to interview him. I hear he's a nice guy, so I'm kind of jealous. So that's pretty cool.
Smart, crazy smart.
That's great. That's great. Well, so one of the things I wanted to point out is you mentioned before BigMouth being a potential influence to normalize sexual behavior. And so I looked at a recent survey that was done by the National Survey of Sexual Health and Behavior. They noted in the years 2009 and 2018, they found that sex among those between the ages of 14 and 19 has actually declined drastically, with 89% certified that they weren't having any sex at all. So in a society where kids are being raised by TV, you would think those numbers would be higher, but the survey tells you it's actually the opposite. So what would be your response to that?
I'm not familiar with that survey. If you want to get into a data battle, I have
Sure.
I have 20 years of doing it. If I mean, you have every influence on kids. There's not only one influence. There's I got into a debate years ago about gun violence. We were concerned about the amount of gun violence that's being targeted to kids, and the scientific research that shows the correlation between violent media and a child's violent behavior. And he goes, well, then why are crime stats down? Why are crime stats down? It's like, because there are billions of dollars being spent on crime intervention every day, police, community efforts to try to get the violence down. So why is it lower, is my response. Why isn't it even lower than that? Because it should be even lower than that with all the intervention that's trying to go on. It's really as high as it is, I think, because of so much media messaging that is again, romanticizing or encouraging kids to act, not understanding the consequences of doing so.
It's interesting too, because whenever growing up in the 90s, whenever somebody spoke out about a property, I kind of was always attracted to it for some reason, like even if I had never heard of it. I grew up in the early 80s, and I remember the PMRC hearings against the music industry, and that was an Alan Tipper Gore led hearing that featured bands like Twisted Sister and Madonna and Judas Priest being told that, hey, this music is being marketed towards children and is potentially influencing them to take harm. And then I remember in the early 90s, I grew up with my mom, and when I came home, I remember her watching the Oprah Winfrey Show, and she would do episodes targeting video games and saying video games are the cause of violence and this, that, and thing. And then I remember Howard Stern obviously becoming a very popular target of the FCC. $1.3 million of FCC fines levied against him. But in almost every instance, and Howard Stern actually called the head of the FCC and asked him to describe what does indecent content mean, and nobody could give a straight answer. What is considered explicit? What is considered indecent? It seems to be somewhat subjective. So how is anybody supposed to make anything without really no pamphlet or no guideline or nothing that says, hey, look, this is what's indecent? Because it seems to be subjective no matter which side of the coin you're talking about. Because I do think the focal point of content being a potential influence is actually both a liberal and a conservative viewpoint. A liberal viewpoint is, hey, if I don't see myself on television, I consider that offensive, for watching this, in terms of representation in media, right? And then, the other conservative side is, hey, if we show this or say this, it's, and liberals go this way too. If we say this, that's offensive to me, so we should cut that out and we shouldn't have that at all. So what's your take on that? That it seems like conservatives and liberals have the same goal in censoring content, but don't know where to start.
Well, you packed a lot of questions into that.
I did. I apologize.
I know I can go on for, and we can probably go on for a couple of hours if you want to,
Sure.
but not. So a couple of things. You're talking about indecent content versus harmful or explicit content. Those aren't the same. They're not synonymous. Indecent content does have a definition at the FCC. But remember, the FCC only has regulatory oversight of indecency on the public airwaves and only for certain times of the day. The article that you wrote, by the way, I bet I'm the first time you never had an interview with somebody that you publicly called a shit stain.
I don't recall that, but I apologize. Let's see.
Well, okay. By the way, it's and you spelled my name wrong too, but that's okay. I guess a lot. But yeah, no, well, here's what shit stain Tim Winter had to say.
Well, it's like you're talking about Seth MacFarlane before. He had some negative things to say about the PTC, and then you guys met, and then maybe now there could be a moving forward.
Here we are. Right.
Yes.
So, okay. Good that we're having the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Going to FCC regulation. FCC has no authority over cable or streaming or print or anything internet. Their only oversight is from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. on the broadcast airwaves, broadcast radio and television, not over cable, not over any other platform. So the Howard Stern, it was interesting. He actually, going back, gosh, this is going back over 20 years ago, Howard Stern actually got pissed off at, I think it was Oprah Winfrey for something, and urged his listeners to go to our website to file FCC complaints against Oprah Winfrey. Okay. So that was when Howard had his TV show on. It was on the public airwaves, and he moved over to satellite radio, where he can do anything he wants because it's not governed by FCC rules. So so that's one thing. Legally indecent, there is a definition. It has been argued about, but when you look at any other law that we have on the books, pick a law. Murder has degrees of what you can do and what you can't do. Well, was it self-defense? Well, was it? I mean, there are all sorts of different rules that govern murder. Any other law that we have in the books. So indecency, yes, sometimes there are loopholes you could probably drive the truck through. But the reality is there is a definition. A depictor describes sexual executory functions in a highly offensive way as measured by contemporary community standards for the broadcast medium. I mean, it's a I'm a lawyer, and lawyers wrote that so that they could get paid lots of money to argue about it. You talked about politics. There was another actually boo-boo in your article about us from a week or two ago. We're not a Christian right-wing organization. We're not a Christian organization. We're not a right-wing organization. We're nonpartisan. We're not a religious organization. We have. I'm a lifelong Democrat. We have Christians. We have Jews. We have agnostics. We have members, Muslims. We have any faith and no faith. As long as you're concerned about kids and how media is impacting their well-being, we welcome you to our table without regard to politics, geography, race, religion, anything. So people have a knee-jerk reaction that, oh, you must be wearing a reverence collar and want to wave your Bible at people. Sure. That's not what we do. There are groups out there that do that. Sometimes we partner with them on things. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree. But that's not what we do. You mentioned the difference between liberals and conservatives on this. I've been here, I'm almost 20 years now here at the PTC. And what's been interesting for me is that, and it's not universally true, but it's generally kind of general themes I've seen. Liberals are way more concerned about media violence and less concerned about sex and profanity. Conservatives seem to be more concerned about the sex and the profanity than the violence. But we're here because when you look back at the science, academics, this research science, and it's all the major research institutions, some of the largest colleges, universities in the world, and not just in the US, around the world, have demonstrated a correlation or causation between what a kid consumes and in media and how they behave and how they grow and how they develop their values and their opinions. So if you're concerned about kids, if you're concerned about media's impact on kids, that's why we're here, regardless of politics. And you're right, there is a different leaning, generally speaking, politically, but and not absolutely. But that's why we think the mission goes beyond. It's fun leading an organization, a national organization that has bipartisan support. Capitol Hill, FCC, the public, our staff, our board. We hopefully represent a broad swath of America on these issues.
Sure. So I mean, you mentioned before some of the press releases you guys have released. You've touted brands like KFC and Olive Garden and Sonic Drive-In, and you talk about, hey, why are these brands advertising at the same time for an animated series or TV series or otherwise. I would think that if I'm someone who's advertising to a demographic, it would want to be, especially if I'm in the food service industry, it would want to be to people that have the power and means in which to get in a car, come to my restaurant, purchase my product, and consume my product, versus there's no chance of a child just leaving, meandering into a McDonald's and without any of his own money because he can't work yet to buy stuff and think like, oh, that kid was influenced by an ad or a TV show to potentially take on and go and get something to eat. I mean, I can't imagine why someone would want to do an advertisement that's geared towards kids at 11:30 at night for a TV show on cable. I think that would be a successful campaign. I would think it would be a non-successful campaign because you're not targeting your demographic for that hour. I know when I was a kid, I had to be in bed by 8 o'clock. So the likelihood of a kid being up at 11:30 at night, doesn't seem plausible to me as a potential advertiser when I want to promote my product.
So how old are your kids?
Say that again?
How old are your kids?
I don't have any kids I'm aware of.
You have no kids you're aware of? Okay. Try to answer your question. First of all, we're not suggesting that KFC, Olive Garden, all the advertisers we've talked to and reached out to can only advertise on shows that are safe for children to watch or that are, I got a little fly in here, sorry,
Sure.
that are appropriate, that are kids shows. That's not what we're suggesting. You are right to point out that these brands need to advertise where their likely customers are going to be. Absolutely. I worked at NBC Television for 15 years. I was in the finance department. I understood that's how you made money, was through advertising. You have a website. You have ads running on that website. Hopefully that pays your bills. What you're trying to do is you're trying to find advertisers who want to reach your viewers. That's business 101, right? Question is, as part of business 101, if you are on a television show that actually offends the values of 100 million Americans. Sorry.
Okay.
I am getting an earthquake warning system on my cell phone.
Oh.
Like.
There's the effect.
So if you're producing a television show that is inherently offensive to 100 million Americans, why would you attach your brand to that show? Even if people are watching that you want to attract, when there are 100 other television shows out there that also have that same demographic, that such a huge percentage of the population would find offensive. You can't be everything to everybody. You just can't. But a show that overtly trashes Christianity, when you have a large portion of this country who are Christians and who are very devout in their faith, why would they ever go to a KFC or an Olive Garden if they know that same company is sponsoring a show trashes their faith? We work with about 300 different corporations over the course of any year, average year, that are advertising on television. We want them to make sure they understand what they're sponsoring with their media dollars. We know that there are great shows that are not intended for children, that are graphic and explicit, that aren't marketed to kids. And if that show reaches a demographic that the sponsor wants to sponsor, okay, that's fine. But keep in mind that there's also scientific research that shows a viewer of a television show. This is academic research by, I think it was University of Michigan or Ohio State, Big Ten school, that found that if a TV commercial airs next to a show, a program content that's really explicit, the viewer doesn't remember the name of the brand that was just advertised. So it was like a 30% or a 33% reduction in recall. So if you're spending millions of dollars on a TV show to advertise your product, and 30% of the viewers are not going to remember your product just because of the content it's in, you try to put it into a different show, into a different television program. So, you know, not every show is intended for kids at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, whatever time of the day. There are hundreds of alternatives where a corporate sponsor can choose to put their media dollars, because they are associating their brand, their product brand, with the content. They can say, oh, we're not trying to be judgmental on the content. Okay, but you're still associating it because your spot airs next to this content. In the viewer's mind, they're associated subconsciously, and there's research that shows that.
Can I ask then, what is the difference then between if a brand chooses to advertise content that, or advertise against the content that might be, you know, as you mentioned, trashing Christian values, versus, let's say, if they were to advertise during a Tucker Carlson, who might, on a regular basis, trash Muslim values? Wouldn't you say there would be just as many, like, potential 100 million people across America who, or, you know, at least millions of people, I don't know if it's 100 million people across America that are of the Muslim faith, that, you know, might be offended by something that is being said by Tucker Carlson, but those same brands would potentially advertise around him. So what's the difference there? There's
a reason why you will find a MyPillow TV commercial on Tucker Carlson, but not on Rachel Maddow.
True.
So, you know, is it universal? No, but there absolutely is some level of accountability that that advertisers feel on politically divisive shows, and there are a lot of companies have standards and practices to say, you know what, because this is so hyperbolic in this world right now, there's such a bitter divide in this country right now, we need to appeal to all Americans. So what do? You know what, we'll sponsor the baseball game, the football game, we'll move money away from cable news. So there actually is a lot of, there are I don't know how many, it's anecdotal in this conversation, but I know for a fact some of the biggest advertisers in the world do not sponsor that type of programming, even politically divisive program, because they know that somebody's out there keeping score and writing them down and say who's sponsoring what.
Sure. Yeah, but it still doesn't stop those ad dollars from being, having worked at a network. You're not going to say no to, an ad spend. You don't care who it really comes from, right? You're just going to take that ad spend.
And well, I mean, at the network, we would say no to some people. I mean, there was we were involved in a big controversy some number of years ago. What was that? The website where you go cheat on your wife.
Oh, Ashley Madison or Holly Madison?
Yeah. Ashley Madison. They were trying to run a spot during the Super Bowl, and it was actually a great PR gimmick for them because they knew they were going to get rejected.
Yeah.
But putting it out there creates all this public awareness of, what's going on. So the answer is there are times where the network will say, no, this violates our standards. Just as the advertisers sometimes will say, no, this content violates our standards.
Gotcha. So I know for years and years, the Parents Television Console was a sponsor of the Family and Consumers Choice Act of 2007. And you were pushed, where the concept was to push for an a la carte TV viewing model, allowing families to choose networks that they feel is best suited for their families. We have that now. So why is there still a conversation about
we have it on devices
like
this? Devices like this.
Say that again.
we have it on devices like this. We actually don't have the ability to buy cable television and only pay for the networks you want.
True, but you can not subscribe to cable, which as you hear about all about cord cutters and stuff like that, and you could just focus on the content that you do deem, so for example, if you're someone who's maybe on the conservative side of, viewing content, an option like a Daily Wire could potentially work for them. So why wouldn't somebody say, you know what, I'm just going to cancel all my cable. I'll just keep maybe the local channels, and then I have Daily Wire for my news and my entertainment, including children's content.
So what's interesting is all of the liberal consumer groups were our biggest allies on that whole fight, and the whole concept was financially, why should I as a consumer, let me put it into an analogy. If I go into the grocery store and I want to buy certain products, I don't have to also buy other products I don't want to get those products that I want. Why, as a consumer of cable, if I want to have, I'm a golf nut. I got my golf shirt on. Golf. I hope to play someday as much golf as I'm accused of. So I love the Golf Channel. Up until the last few years, the only way I could watch the Golf Channel was if I subscribed to my 100 cable channel package. My wife likes the Hallmark Channel. Until recently, she had to buy the whole 100 cable package. We had to pay for FX and FXX. And that was even when my wife worked for the Fox 20th Century Fox. We didn't. So, any consumer product, when you're bundled with some other consumer product you don't want, in order to get the thing you want, why should you pay for the stuff you don't want? It's not one subscription, because when you think about it, when you pay your cable bill, and if you have, unless you're a cord cutter and if all you have is the internet, if you have a traditional cable subscription, you pay one bill, but the cable company takes that bill and every single network 10 cents, 5 cents, 20 cents, $1. ESPN, I think it's $3. And whether you watch that channel or not, part of your money goes to them. Two things. One, I think it's anti-consumer, but number two, why should I be forced as a consumer to pay for the production and distribution of material that I think actually hurts my family in order to get the stuff that I want for my family? It just seems like a fundamental violation of consumer rights, and that's why we took such a big stance on what we call cable choice.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually used to work for the cable company in one of my early jobs, and one of the things that we would get the most questions about was this fee called the Sports and Broadcasting TV fee. Essentially, what the fee was, it was the networks parlaying the cost of acquiring the rights to the biggest sporting events in the world on the broadcast networks, like so the Super Bowl, the World Series. They're taking the fee that they have to pay and parlaying something to the consumer. Now, having said all that, we still had to pay it.
Exactly.
And we still had to pay, even if you didn't want the cable part of it and just wanted the regular channels, you still have to pay that fee. So in essence, we were telling customers, you have to pay for this. Even if you don't like sports, you have to pay for the sports. Yep. So I can see that being an issue, but at the end of the day, you could just not subscribe to cable or TV, really.
And then it's like saying, well, if you don't want to buy those other things in the grocery store, then just don't go in the grocery store. Like, well,
yeah, well, you could do that.
Why can't I? To us, it's what other business, what other industry, in all of commerce forces you to pay for all the stuff you don't want in order to get the few things you do. I'm not aware of it. I helped start 24 different cable networks when I was at NBC. I was on the team that created MSNBC.
Sure.
When I was working with NBC Cable at 30 Rock. And it's a great business because you're getting money from people who don't ever want your product. It's brilliant from the cable network side, but consumer side, you're screwed. And again, why not give them some choice? And I think honestly, when we look back on the last 20 years or so of media, the apps now, where almost every single network has their own app where you can watch, stream live, whatever, that if they had done that if they had allowed consumers to pick and choose which networks they wanted, here's like if you go to a sushi restaurant, here's the list, check which ones I have, and that's what we'll bring you. If cable had done that, I believe that you would see far less cable cutting today, because people would have enjoyed, they would not be put off by the high price of cable for the stuff that they don't want.
Yeah, sure. So today we do have a lot of ways in which parents can control their children's viewing habits. We have the parental guidelines. We have V-chips in TV. We've had those for years. We have web filters on networks that a parent can set up so that their kids aren't viewing, pornographic websites and stuff like that. We have filters on streaming services, setting up profiles for kids so that when I log my kid into Netflix, they only see the content that is geared towards them. So what more is the PTC looking for in this area that you think can help enable parents to further make sure that kids watch what they deem, what any parent is going to deem potentially offensive that is for them to be offended by, because it's going to be different for no matter how many people you ask. You ask 100 people what they consider offensive, 100 people are going to give you 100 different answers. So nobody actually has the consensus of what they can consider offensive. But in instances, we at least have the controls in which to control that regardless.
Each of us is unique in terms of what we want, what we don't want. And, there are 300 million Americans, and there are probably 300 million different opinions on what's good, bad, indifferent, or offensive. And that's fine. So when it comes to parental controls, one of our biggest gripes over the years has been with the TV content rating system. The V-chip only works on a television based upon data that is provided by the network and put into the stream. Each broadcast includes, some other data that comes through the signal that you don't see. It goes to your V-chip in your television that shows here's the TV rating of the show, and it has an age rating. It also has a descriptor, D, L, S, and V. We have done, I think 7 or 8 different research reports showing how accurate and inconsistent the ratings are. Guess who decides what the rating is? Each network decides for themselves what the rating is. We've seen sex scenes, and pardon my graphic content again here, but where a girl was bouncing up and down on top of the guy having sex, and in the middle of it she says, "Hey, stick your finger in my ass." That was rated as appropriate for children. And the reason is because the network knew that if they rated it for adults, a lot of advertisers wouldn't come in and sponsor it. So they just, no, this is okay for 14-year-olds. So the advertisers didn't look at the content. They said, oh, it's TV 14. Yeah, okay, we'll sponsor this. So the TV networks have some culpability that they intentionally rate things younger than they should. And there's no accountability. There's no penalty for them doing so. We've tried to put in some sort of accountability measure for those networks that rate stuff wrong. But their lobbyists have sadly defeated us in that regard. But an accurate system, a consistent rating system, I understand what each rating means. I mean, ironically, the video game industry, which has some of the most violent content, actually has the best rating system out of all the different media platforms. But as a parent, there's a television rating system, a video game rating system, a movie rating system, R, PG-13. There's this music rating system. I mean, you're supposed to know all these different rating systems and know what they mean. One thing we're asking for, how about one rating system that goes across all media that parents can understand? Have this. The Dutch are great. I think the Australians too, but the Dutch especially have a great, it's very robust. Give parents more information. I'll go back to the grocery store analogy. When you go to the grocery store and you look at a box of something, you go, am I going to buy that thing for my kids? You grab it and you look at the back and say, oh, it's got this many carbohydrates, calories, and fat grams. You know what? That's not healthy. I'm not going to do that. Why can't we have something like that in our media rating so that parents look and say, okay, gosh, there's 33 F-bombs. I laughed at you said that how well we did in counting all the F words and stuff in your article.
That was impressive, yes.
Yeah, but we try to base everything we do not on just being cranky, but on data that we can say that this is the data and how many F, 45, 73, 30 F, 38 F words. It's, you know, wouldn't it would be very helpful for a parent to have that information as opposed to TV 14. Okay. Another thing you asked, and this is similar on the same topic. If you go to the streaming media platforms, some platforms have the TV rating system. They apply the TV rating system. Some use motion picture system. Some don't use any system. Some use their own system that's different than anybody else. We appreciate every effort to provide information to parents, but when it's so wildly inconsistent, how is a parent supposed to know what the different systems are? Again, give us something that's consistent, that's accurate, consistent, transparent, and is accountable, publicly accountable. If you know, I go back to that MTV show, you know, stick your finger in my ass. If somehow that content were aware, if a parent could be aware, of what's on BigMouth, a parent could be aware of what's on LittleDemon, just the fact that it's TVMA doesn't quite give them enough data to make informed choices. It's a little bit of a help, but what we'd love to see is something that's across all forms of media, just like other countries do.
Yeah, and I can also see an argument to be made for no rating systems. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to play Mortal Kombat, so I would put it on my standard list, and my dad would go to game, you know, Bunkerland and wait online and eventually buy it, and another tree would be Mortal Kombat. You know, like, so in essence, you can have all the ratings you want. I mean, but if a kid wants to get something, if they're, you know, I only knew really about Mortal Kombat because Oprah Winfrey was telling my mom, don't let your kids play Mortal Kombat. And that's all I ever wanted to do now. I want to see what was the big deal. So there's going to be that childlike sensibility of exploration where I want to know if I touch this top of the stove, is it hot or not? And if so, how hot is it? And so there is that essence of childlike wonder that we go through to have these experiences and then come to our own conclusion. You know, this is right for me, this is not right for me. And then what are the values that I'm using to make those determinations, and where are those values coming from? Are they Judeo-Christian values that are being conveyed by some sort of third-party source, you know, that like you know, my mom used to take me to church every Sunday. Or is that where she's getting her values, or are we getting our values from television? And I don't think we're getting our values from television. I think we're getting our values from our parents. And it's really up to, you know, you're talking about mass shootings before. In almost every instance, I think one of these days, what's going to happen, we're going to learn two things about these mass shootings. One, there was probably some sort of drug-related connection to all of them. And two, what were the parents do? I could tell you, one of the mothers of the Columbine massacre murderers right now makes a living going on tour, touting, you know, mental health awareness and, you know, all this other stuff. And it's like, well, where were you to, you know, tout that mental health and be aware of it when your kid was making that decision to walk into his high school and just take out all his classmates for no reason at all? But the media didn't want to go after the mother or the parents at all. They wanted to point the finger at a Marilyn Manson or, you know, something like, or a violent video game or a TV show. So what's to say where those values are really supposed to come from, rather where they are?
You're making a case for, you know, what's the silver bullet? And I don't think there is a silver bullet. The most powerful research, scientific research, academic research on mass shooters suggests that there are three main causes to what triggers a mass shooter. Number one is their mental health or lack thereof. Number two is their access to weapons that are capable of killing a lot of people in a short amount of time. And number three is the media violence that helped, that the environment of which helped desensitize them to pulling the trigger. Mm-hmm. So it's not number one, and it's not number two, but it is among the top three. So if you look back at you know, any other product, again, go back to any other product in the stream of commerce. Yeah, you put your hand on the stove, you're going to get burned. You're probably going to put your hand on the stove a second time. But we have consumer product safety guidelines. Actually, I worked for a Democratic senator back in the late 1970s, who was considered the godfather of consumer product safety, Warren Magnuson from Washington State. He helped pass, almost single-handedly forced through consumer product requirements for consumer guidelines, safety guidelines. So we have safety guidelines to try to save lives, to try to protect people, adults and children from injury. And when you look back, there's a whole, I go back to my law school days, there's a whole line of product liability where if there's a construction site with construction equipment that's left out overnight, it's called an attractive nuisance to children. It's inherently attractive to children to go and play on the bulldozer overnight when all the construction crew is gone. That's why there's a legal responsibility to put a fence around it, screen it, and to protect it in some way, because people know that there's an inherent attraction that could cause harm, and therefore you're liable for that harm that might come. If we take that same analysis, that same principle, and apply it to other products, including media, we are blessed in this nation to have a right of free speech. That means you can do stuff that's really offensive to a lot of people. It also means you can speak out against stuff that you might be concerned about. It goes both ways. But when it comes to consumer products, the courts have been very protective of entertainment, saying, you know what, the rap lyrics, even though it's explicit, they didn't trigger that action, and they have that free speech to do that. Okay, and California just actually passed a law in the last couple of weeks where they prohibit the introduction of rap violent lyrics in a court case that could be used against the rapper for violent acts. But I flip it to a positive. Chance, the rapper, had a big hit song, and the name of the song was the suicide hotline number, phone number. That was the song, was the suicide hotline number, and it's credited with saving countless lives. So the impact of entertainment is both positive and negative. It can do wonderful things. And what we're saying is, when it comes to the negativity, number one, if you are a producer or distributor or marketer of material that could be harmful to kids or even to adults, but could be harmful, step back and have some corporate responsibility to say, you know, maybe I shouldn't be trying to profit from something that could be harmful. If it's going to be explicit, if it's going to be toxic for kids, put it in a place and a time where it's not marketed to kids, it's not inherently attractive to kids, it's not a cartoon on FXX with a 13-year-old girl as the heroine. Again, we feel that's inherently attractive to children to see a cartoon with a 13-year-old girl. That's why we're having a conversation to begin with LittleDemon. Have some responsibility, and to those parents, they need to have more awareness. They need to be more involved in their kids' media lives. The parents will go to the grocery store and buy organic food and say, oh, we want little Billy to have his healthy food. But then here's the violent video game, and they're not thinking about, okay, maybe that's not so healthy. You're healthy on one side, but maybe this isn't. Trying to create more parental awareness is the foundation of everything we do. Our research, our publications, we're trying to help parents be better parents. The sad thing is, kids who come from a one-parent household when they're growing up, where mom and dad has 2 or 3 jobs trying to make ends meet, they're struggling. If they're out there by themselves at a young age and they don't have the good, strong parental role model, we don't want a toxic entertainment media pushing them to be doing something even more dangerous. It's a huge mission. We know we can't. We're trying to change the media world. We do it one day at a time, one step at a time, one show at a time, one scene at a time, one sponsor at a time. And hopefully, we're trying to do it one parent at a time. We have emails that go out to a couple 100,000 people every Friday. I just was approving the email message for tomorrow morning before we got on the call. And we're trying to help educate parents about the importance of this role and help them to be better parents. But we also want to hold those accountable in the industry who produce, distribute, market stuff that could be harmful. We go back a few years. We helped pass a law in California. Again, I was in the video game publication business for a chunk of my career. Great business, fun business, loved it. We actually helped pass a law in California that prohibited a video game retailer, from selling an adult-rated game to an unaccompanied minor child. It didn't prohibit the making of the game, the marketing of the game, the sale of the game, except if the kid was there without his parent, you couldn't sell them an adult-rated game. I thought, who would be opposed by that? Well, the video game industry filed suit in California, and we fought all the way to the Supreme Court, and we lost because they said, that's against the child's First Amendment right to free speech to buy that adult-rated video game. And it was the Supreme Court ruling you would ever see in your life about who was for it and who was against it, and it was like the weirdest, strangest bedfellows. It was an incredible intellectual exercise to see how they got there. But we lost that, and again, we weren't trying to ban games. We're not trying to burn games. We're not saying you can't do it. You can't say that if a parent wants to buy the game for you, okay, that's the parents. But don't let the kid go to the store, the cash register with the adult game by themselves. And still we lost. So, we're trying to figure out, where are the guidelines and the rules? It constantly shifts every day. That's part of our challenge every day. But I will fight to my last breath stuff that's harmful when if somebody produce it and distribute it knowing a kid might get it, even marketing it to a kid. There's the show Euphoria that's very popular on HBO. We're seeing now how HBO is marketing it to children through TikTok. Like, okay, it's a really dark, heavy, depressing show.
Sure.
Very complicated. Why would you market that to a child that way?
Well, the thing about social media is you have to be 13 in most of these platforms to even get an account. But at the very least, these kids are really teenagers. And I think that show specifically is a reflection on what maybe is the contemporary teenage life, like the coming of age story that might be of that particular background that maybe kids could potentially relate to. I don't really watch the show more, but and then of course, HBO has no advertisers. It's purely subscription based. So a child is never going to be able to call up a cable company. I know the cable company requires you to be 18 or older to be able to make any changes to a cable account. But a kid's not going to be able to call the cable company and say, hey, can you sign me up for HBO? So I would think you'd be okay in that regard.
You can even underage kids can get free tests, or what do they call it, promotional watch X number of shows on the streaming platform, and even minors. So
without a subscription?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can. They've been able to, and there was actually a big push by HBO to get teens. And I saw, and that was another thing in your article that I thought you said. Teens and preteens aren't children.
Yeah.
The father, yeah, they are. Yeah, that's.
Well, that's you as a father. But I mean, for some of us, I was the oldest of 3 kids. As you mentioned, I do come from a background of, not having both parents in the family. And guess what? At 14, 15 years old, I had to grow up. And I had to take care of my brother and sister when my mom was at work. Because that's just the way we had.
You can't drive. You can't get a credit card.
No.
Decisions, you can't vote. Because you're in the 7th grade. So
yes.
We're still children. 9th graders are still children. They are teens.
Sure.
They are different than 5-year-olds. And that's actually another thing that we've noticed over the course of the media landscape. When you go to like Netflix has great content for ages 2 to 8. Great content if you're 2 to 8. If you're 10 to 17, all of a sudden they start throwing R-rated stuff at you. And your brain isn't developed for R-rated stuff when you're 10 to 17. When you're 18, 19, 20, your brain has developed differently than it has when it was 12, 14, 15. It's a process of human development.
I think when anybody talks about the brain, and one thing I wanted to bring up is, I think the most common commercial I see on a daily basis for any broadcast or cable network is the prescription drug commercials. And often they will say, hey, if you take this, you have a chance of suicide and death. So here's a market, here's a product that are being directly sold to everybody who would watch. And they're telling you this will kill you, this could potentially kill you if you take it. There's an actual possibility this might kill you if you take it. But yet I don't hear anything from the PTC saying, hey, these are ads that are telling a viewer base, selling them something that could potentially kill them, hey, buy me.
So we actually did get involved for, this goes back a number of years. We got involved with the pharmaceutical companies and the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, and FDA, Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. The Food and Drug Administration has very strict guidelines when it comes to their advertising. By law, if there's something that I'm on a couple different medications. I'm a man of a certain age. I have certain things that are going sideways at me as I got past 60. So I have to take some medications, and in order for a medication to be advertised on television or even in print, it's called risk benefits. There has to risk benefits disclosure. So the FDA requires every pharmaceutical company to say, in a testing of the drug that happens usually years before that goes to live to the market, all the people who took this drug, here are all the possible side effects that they might have had. It may or may not have come from that prescription they were on, but after they took that prescription, hey, somebody died. Okay, so you must, as a matter of law, disclose that, if you look at it percentage-wise, it's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction, but legally they have to disclose it. And we tried to get, actually going back to the old Viagra commercials when they first came on the air, the erection for 6 hours or whatever it is. We tried to work with the FDA and the pharmaceutical companies to change the wording. So you're not talking about, boners on television. And I thought we actually had made some progress, and ultimately the FDA said no. Okay, we lost that one, but we tried. So a risk benefit on a prescription is something that the company is forced to disclose. If entertainment was, the industry was, if television was forced to disclose all the things that could be wrong coming from watching that show, they would never do it. They will say, screw you, we're not going to say that. We're not going to say this could lead to kids being depressed or suicide or self-harm. So anyway.
But you don't think it's that same argument of peppering, like the influence? If your take is, hey, a BigMouth could pepper children to potentially send nude photos of themselves to each other, couldn't those prescription drug commercials, even the ones that are today, that are peppering the idea of, hey, if you take this, you'll be happy, but you might die? So that's where I'm coming from. Like, it seems like that you're 4 rules for one, but not 4 rules for the other.
It is absolutely one standard, one principle, and I don't know how a kid would go to the pharmacy and try to get whatever the prescription drug is. They can watch the show, but they're not able to go and actually buy the product that's being advertised. They can't even buy alcohol. So I don't think we don't, as a matter of principle, condemn our alcohol commercials, even though I guess perhaps we could, because it's encouraging kids to drink. But we just haven't, that's one fight we haven't taken on before.
Sure. But that's my point, though. Like, there's a press release about every animated series that comes out, but I haven't seen a press release about a new drug commercial that is now being shown during the daytime hours, which is supposed to be the designated time in which kids are, should be allowed to watch whatever they want. We
don't go after every animated programming.
No, but you've been like 3 just this year.
Yeah, more than.
But how many prescription drug commercials have you gone after this year?
I don't understand the analogy of a risk benefit to make sure somebody understands the risks.
But isn't that what the TV ratings do too, though? Hey, just letting the parents know this is TVMA for sexual violence, and that's what they do. Even if the network is at least at the very least, the network is informing the parent, hey, this is what this means and this is what that's for. I know when you watch an FX show, the very first frame that comes up, even before the show goes in, is a monster TVMA logo that says this is for sex, violence, potential drug use, not suitable for all children.
And they say it's required of every show that airs on broadcast or cable has to have a content rating assigned to it, which again is often wrong. That one is actually correct. The rating is actually correct for that show. I don't understand. I mean, we're talking about by saying here's a content rating. No one is saying of all the things that could possibly go wrong, here are all the possible things that could go wrong. You could die from this. You could get depression from this. They don't do that on television.
Because there's no connection between any sort of content and or any sort of television content and any eventuality. It seems
70,
subjective.
there's 70 years of scientific evidence showing
From
the
who?
correlation. Okay, do you have Google there?
Yeah, sure. But Google's
Okay,
a search engine.
Okay, so the National Institutes of Health correlated a increase in teen suicide to the release of the show 13 Reasons Why. The National Institutes of Health, Rand Corporation, Harvard, Ohio State, Michigan, Stanford, every university in the country has done longitudinal studies on the impact of media on children and the harm. The Surgeon General's office. It's the whole point of media. The whole point of the business of media is influencing the behavior of the viewer. Your advertisements on your website are there because your advertisers are hoping they can influence your viewers to go and buy something that they wouldn't otherwise buy. So I mean, if you want to say there's no causation or correlation between content and behavior, you're kind of going to be living there by yourself on that one, because there's literally 70 years of scientific evidence.
The only two examples that I can think of any two examples of media that I can think of that have had any success in convincing others to do potential negative acts or religious texts, like the Bible or the Quran. Conservative leaders from building texts have gone on to extreme lengths in these texts as a defense in litigation. So Christian affiliated priests and bishops had committed far more sexual atrocities than the average Family Guy viewer, and you'd be hard pressed to find any, if at all, watching Family Guy and saying that was the catalyst. So why hasn't the PTC been concerned with, like, the TBN or Joel Osteen or other televangelists who seem to endorse these actions of these priests and not bring them forefront, and who are saying, oh, I'm doing this, because I've been raised on the Bible and now I'm a sexual pervert. And these are actually people who are actually committing atrocities against children.
Okay. I'm against that too, by the way. I'm against that.
Yeah, but I don't see any press releases about how the Bible in Joel Osteen is enabling a book that has been used as the excuse, and nothing has been said about that.
Give me an example of anybody who has endorsed the Bible to sexually exploit children. Give me an example of somebody
You mean the bishops and the priests that have not been arrested for sexual provocation over the last 50 years?
Any bishop or priest who assaults a child should be in jail.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, they should be on death row, don't you think?
I'm sorry?
They should be on death row, don't you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to death penalty for that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But
that's my personal.
PTC,
that's my personal view.
But then I don't see the PTC saying, hey, look, people like Joel Osteen and TVN networks are promoting a religion that enabled these activities and these behaviors to occur. Where an actual definitive scientific basics showed that these people cause these atrocities, and they're representing an institution that enabled them to do that.
Which science are you referring to? Show me a study. Show me a research report.
Show me the Spotlight article of 2001 that broke the story of the Spotlight article of 2001 in the Boston Globe that broke the story of priests molesting and
I read that
having sexual minors.
It makes my skin crawl what they've done.
Yeah.
I don't understand your question as it relates to the mission of the PTC.
Because your take is, so Joel Osteen on TV, right? TBN, TV channel. These are people and properties that have enabled these religious leaders to get away with what they got away with. Even though Tucker Carlson doesn't say anything about any of these, priests or bishops committing these crimes. And you would think the PTC would say something to that effect, like, hey, you know what? This Joel Osteen represents a Judeo-Christian mythology that pantomimes and enables sexual assault.
So Joel Osteen, this is a pastor guy?
The pastor on TV that's on CBS 2 every Sunday, yes.
So and he endorses the rape of children?
Yes, by endorsing Christianity, he's and the Bible, which are usually used as the excuses for these people to get away with these acts. He's endorsing that religion.
Wow. I don't know how you made that leap.
Well, it's easy. If you're a Christian bishop and you knowingly allowed priests to get away with sexual assault, and you're using the church as your defense, you don't think that's a potential of a Joel Osteen or a TBN enabling that defense by saying, "Hey, believe in them"?
John, I'm president of the by the way, it's Parents
Yes.
Council. Parents Television and Media Council is our name.
Yeah. Joel Osteen's on TV.
Our mission is to protect children from the graphic sex, violence, and profanity that is dangerous to them. That
Yes.
Trying to help parents to be better parents and make the entertainment escape.
But what about protecting from the televangelists that endorse the sexual activities of these priests against minors?
I have never seen a televangelist who endorses sexual activity against minors.
Well, they do by spouting the same book that the abusers have done. When you're endorsing Christianity, when you're endorsing the Bible, you're endorsing all the negativities that come along with it. Just like your argument against TV. If you're endorsing FX, you're endorsing, just like your argument with advertisers. Hey, if you're, showing your content opposite of a little demon, you're endorsing that content. So wouldn't that same argument apply to a Joel Osteen or a televangelist who's in essence enabling and not condoning these people who do these actions and say, hey, stay away from people like this?
I think that is the most mindless thing I have heard in a long time.
How do you figure? We have documented evidence of bishops and priests causing mass, abuse of minors, an actual thing that happened. And you're saying that, these televangelists have been on the air for 50 years, have no potential influence on helping continue to grow a religion that enables that such activity.
Dude, you are so far out there. I don't know where that came from, and there must have been something in your life, and I feel terrible if that's arrived.
I went to Catholic school for 6 years.
And I didn't. We're so off the mission of this organization, and you're asking me.
No, because you're talking about warning parents about content that is deemed offensive, which is a subjective take. And then here are these priests and these televangelists coming on the air saying, follow this book, no matter what, it'll help you, it'll solve and answer all your questions. But then the priests who deliver the message from these books are also raping and abusing minors. So that you don't think that there's maybe a responsibility by the PTC to warn parents about, hey, this is a religion that has been known to endorse abuse. Watch out for it.
Okay, I don't know how we're getting down here. Every corner of faith, regardless of what the faith is, has good people and bad people.
Yes.
No faith have good people and bad people. And I don't.
You think Satanists have good people and bad people?
I'm sorry?
Do you think Satanists have good people and bad people?
Perhaps.
Oh, okay. Matt Walsh mentioned earlier this week, he said only Satanists watch cartoons. Do you agree with him?
I'm sorry, only Satanists watch
Matt Walsh, only Satanists watch cartoons.
Who's Matt Walsh?
Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire? Oh, okay. Figured I'd just bring it up. But that's my point. Are there good and bad Satanists? Or is it just good and bad Christians?
There are good and bad human beings.
Yes, there are. But don't you think good and bad is also subjective?
We're not a religious organization.
No, but when you pick your battles to focus on content like cartoons, for example, but not on, again, these televangelists that come on TV tell you to, don't worry, follow this book. It'll answer all your questions. It'll solve you through all of life's problems. But they're being delivered by these same people that are, endorsing convicted pedophiles. Or that should be convicted pedophiles.
What about people of a different faith who are murdering people?
100%. 100% agree.
That's not my mission. That's not my mission. But media that
Laddie Baylor killed 10 million people on the basis of the Bible.
Who?
Vlad the Impaler, he killed 10 million people on the basis of the Bible.
The name of
Vlad
the
the Impaler? Okay, that's a historical context. Vlad the Impaler, early 17th century, I'm probably getting my dates wrong in that regard, but killed 10 million people on the back of the Bible, saying we're trying to spread Christianity. If you're not with us, you're against us.
How horrible is that?
Terrible.
Yeah.
But it happened.
So
like every religion has every religion has its skeletons and its closets. So I mean, I'm totally fine with it. But what I don't hear is the PTC coming out against these religions who are allowed to have free public airwaves and who are endorsing the actions of these bishops and these priests who've committed these atrocities.
We have a right to free religion in this country. It was one of the founding principles. We don't have a right to use that religion to sexually assault children.
Right.
That's not my mission. There are organizations out there that I would gladly align with privately, personally, myself.
No, I'm talking about like specifically focusing on the television content that is Christian affiliated, and not saying, hey, because this is Christian affiliated content, you're affiliating yourself with a religion that has endorsed and looked the other way when these atrocities and abuses have occurred.
John, all due respect, I think that's I'll say it's a stretch.
How so?
I respect your opinion. It's we're 1 hour and 8 minutes into our conversation. I don't know how that possibly. I can't.
I would think if the PTC is worried about content being potentially seen by children, they would want to also focus on content that might be Christian leaning and is not, taking accountability for their members' actions and endorsing a religion that enables these abuses to occur.
I'll make you a deal. If there's ever a televangelist who thinks it's funny for a kid to tell his dad he's going to suck his dick so he doesn't have to go to summer camp, I will go after him with both barrels.
Oh, I don't know if a televangelist would say that, but when those atrocities actually happen,
BigMouth says that. BigMouth says that.
Says that, but it doesn't actually do anything. That's why it's an animated series.
We're asked to be entertained and laugh at it. What else, John? What else do you have to ask me? We're out of time. What else would you like?
Oh no, that's it. I'm fine with that, Tim. I appreciate having you on, and thank you so much for talking to me. I'll let you go.
And what will next steps be? This is recorded, so you're gonna put
site? Or? That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. It'll be interesting. So we're not a Christian organization. We're not a conservative organization. We're not a right-wing organization. I'm hopefully, well, maybe you think I'm still a shit stain. I don't know.
No, I think you're overall a nice guy, Tim. I was hoping to get out of this. I always want to hear both sides of the conversation because I think restricting a content, regardless of what affiliation you have, is an incorrect take to have. At the end of the day, it's all art. It's subjective. Art is the eye of the beholder. Everyone has a right to make adult decisions, and whether or not those parents want to make those adult decisions and then make sure they filter down to their children to also make correct decisions, that's on the parent. I don't know if that's on any specific television program to parent their children. And if you're using television to parent your children, then you maybe have other issues to talk about.
But there was one thing you mentioned that you said they don't have R-rated content on Disney Plus. Actually, they do. They just started this last summer in July. They put at least 3 movies on that are R-rated on Disney.
Yeah, but then you could go into your settings and filter out profiles and say, okay, kids profiles only watch this.
You said that you didn't see any, and Hulu does, but that's not what Tim is talking about here. I'm just correcting you in your article.
Well, yeah, no, that's fine, but I still don't. I didn't see any instance where if I set up if I were to set up a kid's profile, that I would be able to see R-rated content.
That's not what your article said.
And by definition, a streaming service can only sign up for someone who has the means in which to sign up for that streaming service. So in theory, someone who's 18 or older.
And Walt Disney Company, since its inception, has been a trusted brand of families. And now, maybe not so much.
I mean, I think there's still a trusted brand of families, but I think your idea of what you think a family is might be subjective. Because families' values might be different for every family. Every family has a right to believe and endorse whatever they want to. Nobody has the right to say, oh, go this way, go that way.
This is not a what's right or who has rights. It's Disney's making a corporate decision that is off-putting to many families, and Disney's financial.
But then again, unsubscribe.
Correct. And Disney's financial fortune was built on the backs and wallets of parents. And it's going to be interesting to see if in the future, if by doing this, if by Disney trying to become more like Netflix, is Disney going to increase or decrease